that, Jared, I think we've known each other for a little over 2 years now. And I'm super excited you're here today. What I want to do is just let the audience know 3 things about you. You've been in data for over 20 years, and you've worked in 4 vertical segments: government, education, healthcare, and of course finance. And kind of a core focus area of what you knock out of the park is ushering organizations through data transformations. Would you say all of those are spot on?
Spot on. Two facts and a lie. No, that's exactly right.
And so Jared and I are just going to have a conversation. There's a set of questions we're going to walk through. To start it off, Jared, based on your work at the Center for Educational Policy Research, what are the key principles, the takeaways that are critical for success? You know, everyone here in the audience is at a different stage of the journey, whether they're considering taking the leap, whether they're in the leap now. What are the key principles that you've learned based on your experience over the years?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Bruce, and Passerelle, and our friends at Alter and Snowflake. Really happy and excited to be here and meeting everyone. So as Bruce alluded to, I worked at the Center for Education Policy Research at Harvard at one of my several stints. And I've sort of been in the game of helping organizations either through consulting or through direct employment, through data modernizations, data transformations. It's remarkably similar being in many different sectors. Most organizations, it's remarkably similar how their difficulties and their hurdles are just so similar, regardless of industry. Everyone's sitting on a mountain of data. It's very overwhelming. How do we use it? What are the skills? What are the tools? What are the techniques? And so, in my time consulting and working at the Center for Education Policy Research, we worked with a lot of these organizations, and everyone, we found the keys to success really are first, start small. Don't try to boil the ocean. All these organizations say, well, if I just had a data warehouse, or if I just had an analytics tool, everything would be great. And we used to say in academia especially, the tool is not the panacea, right? So you can buy a 6-figure, 7-figure tool and have someone implement it, and then no one uses it, and now you've got 6-figure piece of hardware or software sitting on the shelf. So you want to really start small. Don't try to boil the ocean. Stay hyper-focused on business outcomes. So really, the key is figuring out where either the pain points are, or in many cases, the organizations don't even realize they have pain points because they've just been doing things for the same way for so long. So identifying, I hate to say low-hanging fruit, it's really the areas where you will show the most value, and I think we'll get into that a little bit later. But starting small, hyper-focusing on those wins, on the business value, and then identifying your data champions. A lot of folks think they're going to go at it alone. Really, there are folks in your organization, across functions, across business lines, across departments, that do want to use data, that are savvy enough, that maybe haven't had the opportunity to, and you know who they are. The folks that are very good at Excel, the folks that are asking the right questions. Get them on the bus, bring them on the team. I call them data champions. You'll hear the term data stewards often. I call them data champions. And these are the folks that will help you decentralize and communicate really your vision and help teach and bring everyone along with you. It's a lot easier when your neighbor sitting in the cubicle or in the office next to you, you can go ask them a question versus, oh, I've got to go ask the VP of data or VP of information systems, the director of analytics, my question. Oh, well, if I can ask Bob sitting next to me, that's a little bit easier. So it helps to really cultivate that culture of change for data.
As you look at the journey, every journey has bumps in the road, roadblocks. And I know you started your journey, for this modernization this year. What has been your biggest roadblock so far, and what did you do to overcome it?
So I'm really lucky. I was talking with a couple folks earlier. We've recently have had some change at the executive level. So our executives are really progressive and bought into the idea of a data-forward, data-centric, technology-forward organization. I know many are probably not in that position and have to do some convincing. Some of you I've been talking to are actually being forced into it through some of losing some of your data resources. I won't say who, but we weren't forced. We kind of took that step. So we have the executive buy-in. That being said, the culture I find has been one of the most difficult things. People, are somewhat afraid of change. They're used to doing what they've always done. And having been relatively successful at doing it, especially at credit unions, regional banks, very used to the high-touch, white-glove service, the interactions, and a lot of that is very much manual, not very tech-driven, it's very people-focused. So when you change the focus from, we're very people-oriented, which is tough to scale, and now we want to move a little bit more technology-oriented, there's going to be some cultural shifts. And these are folks who have never needed to use data, have never asked questions. In our organization, I usually say, I like to say, we use data operationally or defensively. Every morning we have 500 reports that go out across the organization, a list of new accounts to go check in the core system to make sure that they were set up correctly, and a list of potential transactions that were a potential fraud transaction, or a list of whatever, you name it. So people are used to getting their lists and going through it and checking it off, and they're done for the day. Telling people, you're not going to get your list anymore, you're going to get a dashboard. You can go to it whenever you want. You can drill down into it, you can filter it. Some of our folks, even some of our senior management, have never even filtered an Excel spreadsheet before. So culturally, getting people to think in a data-driven, data-centric way has been a little bit of a challenge. But again, finding the right people, the right collaborators, the data champions, and democratizing, and ensuring that folks understand that they're not alone, that they're not being forced into this and are just going to be thrown into the darkness and have no idea how to do their jobs anymore. And I found time and time again, the proof is in the pudding, right? So as soon as people see that their jobs get a little bit easier, they can do them better, they can ask the better questions, they can be a little bit more strategic and a little bit more offensive, they turn around 6 months, a year later, and they say, well, I cannot believe I used to do it this old way. I can't believe how did we even exist? How did we make any money? How did we service our members? So the cultural changes is probably the most difficult, but again, it's our job to support and make sure that everyone is there through the journey.
A lot of things are going on in the industry. What were the pain points that made you decide to modernize this year? What drove you to take action this year? And I know there's options out there, we call them whether credit union in a box or bank in a box solution. What made you make a change, and why not some type of bank in a box solution?
As Bruce mentioned, we've known each other for probably a little over 2 years. I've only been with the credit union for a little over 3 years. And when I arrived, it was very obvious, things were kind of in the Stone Age when it came to data. Very brittle systems. We do have somewhat of a data warehouse in a box. We're on XP2, Fiserv XP2 as our core banking system. We have there what they call Data Explorer. It's very proprietary, very brittle, breaks easily, hard to maintain, hard to fix when it does break, and therefore there was a lack of trust with some of the data. People didn't know if they were getting the right thing out of it or getting the right answers to their questions. So it was very obvious to me when I got there, like, we need to build the trust back in the data. So really the beginning part of my journey was, before we even started the modernization, was ensuring that the existing processes had a little bit better fail-safes, were a little less brittle, the data was a little better, data cleaning, data quality, some data governance efforts, if you're familiar with data governance. If not, I'd love to talk about it. So we had a year and a half where we were just taking what we had and seeing what we could do to make things a little bit better where we were. And then we got to a point and it was like, okay, we've kind of stabilized things, people kind of trust what we're doing now, but it's still centralized, black box. I'll ask for a report and a team of 2 will write it, and maybe we'll get it, maybe we won't, maybe it'll take a week, maybe it'll take a month, and I don't know the priority of my request. And so it was obvious, we need more self-service. We need more dashboarding. We need more, more modern systems to support the stuff. And again, proof is in the pudding. You start giving people a little bit, and they want a little bit more, and then they want a little bit more, and that's how you cultivate that data culture. And so that was really the emphasis there, moving away from these on-prem, brittle, systems that we can barely do our defensive operational reporting, getting folks to self-service, getting to data democratization, and getting to the more fun analytics, the more fun questions, the more complex stuff.
Yeah, I think you had commented earlier about shifting from a defensive position to an offensive position using data. Do you want to spend a minute on what your thoughts were there, where we can actually maybe take on new territory versus always being on a defensive catch-up mode?
Yeah. Predictive analytics, I think, is where everyone wants to get, and the term is maybe a little tough to understand, but next best product is one of the things they talk about. When you're on Amazon and you add something to your cart, it's like, oh, people often buy these other things. They call that next best product. And wouldn't it be great if we could offer a next best product? We have digital marketing, we have our marketing campaigns, but they're pretty much blanket campaigns. Let's go try to sell some auto loans. Let's go try to get more certificates. We're not really targeting folks, and so offense. Using it defensively is more, again, give me my list of things to do, and I'll go through it and check the boxes, and then I'm done for the day. Offensive is really where are the opportunities? Where can we do things better? Can we do more targeted, segmented marketing? Can we improve processes? Get people out of manual, looking at a list and into more automated lists, and of course you need or automated workflows, I should say, and of course you need the data behind that to support the data and the systems, moving the data around to support it. Fraud, for example, is very, very big for us right now. Our fraud has been skyrocketing recently, and instead of, here's, anecdotally, we want new members in their first 30 days with a large transfer externally, blah, 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 here's a list. Why can't we run some risk analytics, risk models? Okay, well, we know historically what our fraudulent transactions and fraudulent accounts look like. Let's feed that into a model. Let's let it tell us what the important points to look at. And often I found, some of your anecdotal gut feelings can be, confirmed with that, but oftentimes there's some things that you just never even thought of. I can think back to my days in the tax world. We were running a risk model, and it turns out people living in a specific zip code were very risky collections cases, very risky tax collections cases. And it's like, well, that's weird. Why did that happen? Like, these people in this one zip code. It turns out there was a very prominent tax lawyer there giving out free advice to everyone. And of course, no one really knew the advice, so they were all messing up their taxes, and they were getting very risky. And they thought, the guy's got my back. If I ever have any problems, I'll go get him to do some pro bono work for me. So, guess what? These folks, they're very difficult taxpayers, so we better target them with very specific communications and other things to make sure that they're on the up and up. So oftentimes the models really tease out the things that you didn't know were happening, and that's before you even get to machine learning, all that stuff, and all the fancy buzzwords. There's just so much that you can do with the data that you never would have known possible until you dive in.
And I think there was one other pain point you had mentioned around holistic member 360. So, what is it that a member 360 will do for your credit union versus, pulling reports out of each individual systems?
Yeah, we're on that journey right now. So we've got core banking, we've got mortgage servicing, we've got loan origination, we've got a student loan, an external student loan servicer, an external commercial loan servicer, yada, yada, yada. Dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of systems where some data lies, some are sources of truth for different things. And no centralized 360 picture of the member, which is key to doing some of these analytics, certainly some of these targeted marketing analytics, and just knowing our members, generally speaking. One of the things that our CEO, Peter Rice, is big on is key life events. Like, we want to know our members so well that we want to know when they're having a baby, when they're purchasing a house, when they're about to purchase a car, when they're going off to college, when they're sending their kids to college or going off to college themselves. And we have the data. We can do that. We have transactional data. We have survey data. We have lots and lots of things. We just can't do it in our current world, certainly, in our data warehouse in a box. And so we absolutely need modernized systems. We need to get all that data together and commingle it, and then analyze it. And then we can absolutely tell, oh, you had purchases in these, you went to Babies R Us and Home Goods and a couple other, look, maybe you're getting ready for a kid. Maybe we can start, talking to you about, saving for college or other sorts of savings things or trusts or things like that. It borders on the creepy sometimes, but the better you know your member, right, the better you know your customer, the more targeted you could be. And certainly in these times, we found that really people want that targeted personal experience. They don't want the, sign up for a cheap auto loan or sign up for a high interest, high yield savings account. They want that personalization. Hey, we know you, and we know that because we work very closely with you, we know that these are the things that are important to you, and we want to help you on that journey.
As you look both now and into the future, how will this data stack help you face the challenges that you have now and also what you see coming in the future?
So for the very first time, now that we're in the cloud and now that we're using Talend, we can actually connect to our SaaS data sources. If you use SaaS cloud sources, Salesforce or HubSpot or ServiceNow or any of the kind of modern software as a service platforms that all integrate over API, we had no way to integrate with a lot of them because we were using nightly batch files. If you can get us an export and send it to us, we can download it and throw it into our data lake or data pond, as I like to say, because it wasn't very big. For the first time, we can now get real-time data. We can connect to our SaaS sources. So we can start making more real-time decisions. We talk pipe dream, we're maybe 3 to 5 years in the future, but wouldn't it be great if our app knew we knew exactly when you made that purchase at Dunkin' Donuts, and our app said, hey, Jared, you spent $50 at Dunkin' Donuts this week. You might want to cool it, you're over your budget. Or you walk by, our Bill Ricca branch because you're going to the Market Basket right next to it. Like, hey, we noticed you're right near the branch. Why don't you stop in and talk to us about some certificates or some other, again, targeted stuff. So, that streaming real-time stuff, it's a whole new world. And we're nowhere close to that, but we can think of the possibilities and get excited about them. Of course, there's a lot of foundational work that we're doing right now. But we're certainly excited about the future.
Options. I know there's a lot of options out in the market. You name it. We could probably fill 20 slides with logos of companies that make data stack pieces of an architecture. What led you to the stack that you have today? And what was the criteria that you used to feel comfortable and confident that this is the right stack?
So especially in our world, I think folks like to go with what they know, right? There used to be a saying, nobody ever got fired for buying an IBM, right? And it's sort of similar in the data world. You've got your Informaticas, your TIBCOs. These guys have been in the game for a very, very long time, 20, 30, 40 years. They've been doing the same thing. We looked at them, but it was very obvious to us that they were taking what they've always done and just kind of plopping it, lifting it and shifting it into the cloud. It didn't look very modern, it didn't feel very modern, it kind of worked the way it always worked. It wasn't graceful, wasn't intuitive, wasn't user-friendly. I was at the Gartner Data Analytics Conference 2 years ago, not last year, 2 years ago. And Snowflake, Alter, Talend, NowClick had huge presence there. And You know, so first of all, I'm very much a best in breed kind of a guy. I want my integration software to do integration really well, and I want my database to do database really well, and I want my visualization tool to do visualization very well. And I found that, you know, any company that claims their stuff can do everything can probably do some things well and most things not well. When I was a kid, my father always said, you know, why would I buy a TV VCR combo when I can get the best TV and I can get the best VCR and hook them together? If the VCR breaks, well, now I got a crappy TV. If the TV breaks, well, now I got a crappy VCR. So why not just go best in breed? So the fact that you know, this stack is very much best in breed. You know, huge presence at the data analytics conference all over the place, and very you know, great looking stuff, and still very mature. You know, Gartner Magic Quadrant leaders and Forrester Wave and whatever, and also born in the cloud. Truly modern platforms that were built to be cloud forward. Not just, we're going to take our old thing and throw it in the cloud and call it cloud and charge you cloud subscription fees for it. These are truly modern, graceful tools, and so far we're only about 6 months into our journey here, but so far we are very glad that we've made this decision.
As a coincidence, we ran into your CEO in the lunch line, and he's in a meeting right next door, correct?
Yes.
Understanding, I mean, I feel you're close with the leadership, with the executives, in tune of what they want to accomplish, where they want to take the credit union. How do you feel this modernization effort is going to support the innovation that you know your CEO and your executives are where they want to go, where they're going to want to take Hanscom Federal Credit Union?
Well, first of all, I think Peter follows me around because I run into him everywhere. I don't know how that is possible.
And we're going to give him a copy of this recording after this is over, just so you're aware.
Sorry, what was the question? Supporting the executives.
Supporting the execs.
Yes,
How will
yes.
this go?
Well, you know, half of my job, I've always said, is evangelist. And I use the saying teach and preach, or preach and teach, sorry. Again, a lot of these folks, everyone wants to be data-driven, data-centric, technology-centric. Nobody really knows what that means. When I first started with Hanscom, you know, a little over 3 years ago, there was a board-level strategic initiative. I'll never forget it. Strategic initiative number 5, and you know, it was kind of a little blurb. And when I boiled it down, it was basically use data better. So you can't really get anywhere when your mandate is to use data better. So it's incumbent upon us, folks in this room, to teach. These are the things that we can, this is what we do today. We're very familiar with that. These are the things that we can do tomorrow. And once you know where you are and where you want to be, you can really lay that roadmap to getting there. So it's really about, you know, and of course, as I'm going to harp on it a lot, and I apologize if I'm beating a dead horse, you know, those business wins, those business outcomes, staying focused on those. You know, once folks start seeing we're, you know, 20% more efficient, optimized here, we're, you know, have 30% better conversions on our email marketing or whatever it is, you know, again, that's when folks can start seeing the fruits of the labor. Otherwise, it's all very confusing and very kind of amorphous, and so it's our job to really teach, you know, show everyone, tell everyone what you can do, and then guide them there to it. Again, most people are excited. They want to go through the journey. They just don't know how. And so making sure that folks really understand, here's where we are, here's where we want to go, this is how we're going to get there. Having that plan really helps folks kind of, you know, internalize it.
As you look at serving the credit union, there's a variety of business lines, right? Commercial, consumer, mortgage. How do you pick who to serve, and who's priority and who's second, and what approach do you take to serve the lines?
So the approach we took, again, the higher value, quicker wins, and these are the places where there's a lot of manual effort today because the data's not there or the data's in different places. We found these are, at least in our organization, deposit ops and risk were two big ones. We, again, look at lists of things every day and check them off and make sure they're not fraudulent or they're set up correctly or what have you. Once you can start, and cross-referencing. I go from the mortgage system to the core system to the application, to the origination system, and then back to my risk system, and then back here. That's ludicrous. So really starting to, if you can show the proof with the automation, we can get the data collected all together in the same spot. And by doing so, we can make your job 10 times easier. We can make you 10 times more efficient because A, you don't have to look at 100% of these things anymore. We'll flag the ones that we think are important. And then B, you don't have to bounce around to 2, 3, 4, 5 different systems. We'll just give you all that right up front and with you, and you look at it, you click yes, no, whatever, or create an investigation case in your risk system. None of that would have been possible in the old world. In the new world, that is very much possible. We can ship that data around, we can commingle it. And that's, again, the smaller, quicker wins, the higher value wins, and the stuff you really want to focus on before you start tackling the fun stuff, the analytics stuff, the modeling stuff, because that takes a lot more effort. It might also have very high value in the end, but relatedly, much more effort, much more data's got to be there. It's got to be perfect data. It's got to be fed into these systems in specific ways. So you'll get there, but you start with the small stuff.
Another area is internal staff, so HR, the project management office. Do you see efficiencies, opportunities beyond just the strict business lines, efficiencies with data for internal use?
Absolutely. So as I was saying, for the first time ever, we have access to a lot of that data. We're a UKG for HRIS, which again is API based. So we do have access to that data. It's funny, and I think we're going to talk about it in a little, but as far as data sensitivity is concerned, HR, I think they have been, at least for us, the most difficult to convince to kind of, release their iron grip on their data, because this is very sensitive. It's employees, it's salaries, it's performance evaluations, and nobody should ever see this. HR is the only one who should ever see this. It's like, okay, well, can we convince you that we're gonna, in the new world, because we couldn't do this in the old world, can we convince you in the new world that we can only take the data that we need, secure it appropriately, and by secure it, I mean make sure only the privileged folks have access to it, use it in a way that brings you value. And our HR department has never had performance benchmarking before. Like, who are our most productive employees? How do our managers recognize who they are? Do they evaluate them such? Are we promoting them? Are they engaged? We do a quarterly employee engagement survey through Qualtrics. Again, a new data connection for us. Can we tie all this stuff together? Their performance evaluation, their productivity, if it's a teller, you've got all of their activity in the core banking system, or a loan officer, you can get all that data. And are they engaged? Are we doing what we should? Are our L&D efforts working? Are we managing our projects? So you said PMO, right? How efficient are our projects? How good are we at creating project plans? We still do things in a little bit of a waterfall way. We're working on an agile transformation now. But if we have the numbers in front of us to show us, like, well, we've never hit a timeline, and we've never been on budget, and we've had all these risks, and we can reduce a lot of that through maybe an agile transformation. If we had those numbers, it would be a little bit easier to convince. But we don't have that data yet. We have the capability now to get a lot of that data. But we're working again with these business lines, with these departments to show them what we can do, show them what the art of the possible is, as Bruce likes to say, and making them comfortable that yes, we're gonna secure your data. Don't worry, we're not going to be displaying everyone's salary, on a public dashboard.
I know you're fairly early in your journey. Just landed the platform this year in 2023. What lessons have you learned so far?
Well, as I was saying earlier, the biggest hurdle for us is cultural, finding the right people, teaching them. What we are doing, is kind of, I think as I mentioned, doing like little proofs of concept. Proofs of concept, yes. So finding the folks, getting them something quickly, maybe not a final state, maybe not a production, but here it is, like look at it, use it, tell us, and a little bit more agilely, right? Tell us what you think of the dashboard, of the data, of the metrics that we've kind of decided. That's another thing. You go to, you've been doing the same thing for 20, 30 years. That was one of the toughest things when I first started 3 years ago. I went to our chief lending officer. I was like, what data, what dashboards do you want to see? What data? He was like, I don't know. I was like, well, I was coming from healthcare at the time. I wasn't a subject matter expert. I was like, well, I'd love to build you a dashboard of KPIs that you can look and you understand how your department's doing. Like, what do you look at from a day-to-day basis? I don't know. He ran a fantastic, a lean, mean lending machine, but it was already so rote and so driven, just do the same thing day in, day out, and make those numbers and get those loans, that there was really no thought about like what else do I want to look at. So again, when folks have never really used data, when they've never worked with data, the cultural change is difficult. Just getting the questions out of them. Like, what do you want to see? What's important to you? And everything's a little easier when it's tangible. So, okay, here's a dashboard. What do you think of it? Oh, well, that's cool, but what if I had this, and what if I had that? And oh, I'd love to see turn times on these applications. So I'd love to know how quickly they get funded, or how quickly they're approved, and then once they're approved, how quickly they book and are funded. Originally we found some really weird things going on with our HELOCs, where they were being approved relatively quickly and then sitting around for a while waiting to be funded. And how can we now affect that? How can we improve that time to funding? And we'd see a lot of withdrawn applications in that time. So these are things that you can affect, and like, oh, who are the loan officers? Maybe specific loan officers that are problems. Maybe it's the process itself that's a problem. But getting that data in front of them, allowing them to play around with it, making it tangible, and then they'll start asking the right questions, and that's when the engine starts going.
Is status quo acceptable anymore?
Well, as I said, we have new leadership, and so status quo is absolutely not acceptable in our organization. But even, just generally, societally, coming off of pandemic, technology is very important. And again, doing the things the way we've always done them. I don't know if anyone else here does the Fiserv, the Radin performance analytics, but they do them. If you've never heard of them, Fiserv's research arm, Radin, they collect everyone's data every 6 months, and they crunch it and they benchmark it, and they tell you macro trends and micro trends, and you see that the deposits are going up nationally across all financial institutions, and retail banking is going down. Branches are closing. So we are not getting that face-to-face interaction anymore. Now we need the technology to be able to personalize that experience. What we've always done so well, that personalized experience that we've done face-to-face, we now need to turn that into a digital personalized experience. We've also seen a shift, from the first decade of the 2000s, we saw a shift to small regional banks and credit unions. And in the second decade, we started seeing a shift back away, and technology is a real big part of that. Convenience, ease. We want these things to be easy. One of the things that we're struggling right now, and by the way, I have a colleague front and center there. That's why I keep kind of looking at her and kind of gesturing over. One of the things we're struggling currently right now is online digital banking account. You can do it on the web. It's not very easy. We lose a lot of folks halfway through the process. You cannot do it at all on our mobile app. You can't download our mobile app and then become a member. You have to already become a member. You have to already be a member to use our mobile app. And so, how do we even know where to begin to fix that process? We need the data that tells us, okay, well they're getting 3 screens in and then they're failing to fund because it's difficult. We can't. They don't want to put in their banking information to do an ACH to fund their account. Can we integrate with technologies like Plaid that allow us, just put in your credentials select your bank and put in your credentials and we'll transfer the funds for you. Just removing some of those barriers. So, all of this technology, all of this convenience, It's all supported by the data underneath and where that data is and how you manage it. You can't do that with siloed systems and siloed data. So that's really where this is all supported.
You opened up the subject with HR data. How important is it to classify any and all data that you land centrally and keep it secure? How important is that?
Yeah, I think there's a healthy paranoia in every industry about data and data sensitivity and what is it and where is it going. And certainly we hear a lot in the news about these large data breaches. I forget, there was one very recently, a huge data breach. 23andMe, that's right, which is, you don't get any more personal than that. But even in the financial sector, I can't remember exactly who it was. I feel like there's a pretty big data breach. But anyway, we're all afraid of it. So there's a couple of things. There's a lot of, a lot of institutions are a little bit afraid of the cloud. If I have my data and it's on-prem and I know what server it's on and then I know it's behind a lock and a key in a server room with an alarm, then it's safe. When in actuality, it's a lot more difficult, especially as you're exposing more and more of your data into the cloud, to the internet. It's way more difficult to be on your own and trying to secure your own data. It's kind of unintuitive, but the studies say that cloud data services are much less risky than on-prem services because you just can't do it all. You don't have your own white hat hackers trying to break into your systems all the time. The cloud services do. I'm sure, I'm not going to speak for Snowflake, I'm sure Snowflake does. I'm sure they're, I'm getting some head shakes from the Snowflake guys. They're proactively figuring out all of the new, fun, fancy ways that hackers are trying to do to break into their systems and to get access to data, and they're proactively preventing it. So the cloud, statistically speaking, is more safe than keeping your data on-prem. And then beyond that, the data access, even if it's internal, again, who has access to HR employee data? Who has access to members' sensitive data, SSNs? We even consider our member numbers, our account numbers, to be sensitive data, and we only give them to privileged people. So having tools, especially tools like Alter, that are very much point and click, create your policy. These are the roles that have access to these pieces of data. Rows, specific fields in a table, specific rows in a table. Back when I was in government, they would have in the tax administration game. They would flag in the system specific taxpayers who were restricted taxpayers, local celebrities, politicians. You couldn't just go in and look up Tom Brady's finances. You couldn't just go in and look up Mitt Romney. This is back in the Mitt Romney days. You couldn't look up Mitt Romney's taxes. We didn't have a way to do that in our systems previously. Now with Alter, we can say you do have access to this data point, you don't have access to this data point. Even if you do have access to it, you can't look up Tom Brady's accounts unless you're a privileged user. And even if you do, we're going to show you only the last four of his SSN because we don't want you accidentally, defrauding Tom Brady. Although I'm sure he probably wouldn't even do this. So all of these safeguards in place with Alter, and it's all, again, plug and play, point and click, very easy to set up, and not something we could even come close to in the old world.
At the risk of having a self-serving question, what attracted you to work with Passerelle? Why us? What value did we bring to the table?
Bruce knows this well. We had actually looked at Passerelle and why I've known Bruce for a little over 2 years, we had looked at Passerelle for a different project, not a data modernization. And we didn't select them, and we went with some competitors, and we were actually maybe a little disappointed with the quality of the output that we got from the competitors. One of the things that I love about Bruce and Passerelle is they're, within the financial services, they're very much embedded in the financial services sector. They speak the language, they know the systems. You say Fiserv, FIS, Finastra. They know what you're talking about, and so not just the systems, but they know kind of the struggles. Oh, you've got DNA or Premier or XP2. Oh, we know that. We know all these problems that come along with it, and we can help you solve those problems. Like, Great. We've had vendors who have claimed to know Fiserv. We just recently did an integration with our mortgage origination system and our core, XP2. And we went with the vendor, oh yeah, we work with Fiserv all the time. Well, okay, it turns out they know who Fiserv is, but they never actually even worked in XP2 and literally had to get trained in XP2 Apex to write the integration. And that was like, whoa, well, you kind of said you worked with Fiserv. With Passerelle, we know that they understand the systems, they understand the pain points. And they're very, very close partners with the Snowflake and the Talent, who independently, and Alter, as I said, independently, was very much wowed by the products when I was at the Garden Analytics. And reviewing some of these products, there are a lot of choices in the market. You can go Snowflake, you can go Redshift, you can go Synapse, you can go any which way. And as I said, on the integration layer, TIBCO, Informatica, Talent, Click, lots of others. I was impressed with the products. I was impressed with the subject matter expertise by Passerelle. I was impressed with the fact that they were such close partners and knew the technology. It just seemed kind of like a match made in heaven. And again, six months in, so far so good.
I know part of our focus has been DataRocket, which is a set of accelerators running on top of Snowflake and Talend. What's your perception of Rocket and the value it's bringing to the table?
Yeah, I love the model for sure. So the fact that built into DataRocket comes basically an integration framework on top of Talend. So yeah, Talend's going to move the data, but once the data is in Snowflake, then there's a whole framework within Rocket to keep to persist the data, to correlate it, to do some data quality monitoring on it. Where do you have densely populated data? Where do you not have very densely populated data? Where are you missing certain pieces of information, contact information, demographic information? So there's the data quality pieces. There's some cataloging pieces that come along with it. Some master data management, if folks are familiar with master data management pieces. That's going to be the next part. The next big part of our journey is a big master data management. Just a few weeks ago, the VP of residential lending emailed me, Jared, we sent some marketing material, like mailers for home insurance, for home and auto insurance, to all of our people, for all of our members who have mortgages, and we got return mail. Like, why are we getting return mail? We know these people, and we know where they live, and these are our members. It turns out they were using addresses out of the mortgage system and not out of the core banking system. And some of these folks had moved. Maybe these were second properties, these were rental properties, so they didn't actually live there. And they've changed their address in our core banking system, but the address never was changed in the mortgage system because people generally don't even know that there are two systems. Like, why would anyone know to go back to the mortgage system to change it? So the master data management, making sure we've got good data everywhere throughout the organization, up-to-date, consistent data. The DataRocket is going to help us on our journey with that as well. So it's getting all of the pieces together is good. Getting someone to implement it is better. Having that extra layer on top to coordinate all of these things and really surface the issues and allow you these entrees into data quality, data governance, master data management, really accelerates the whole journey.
How do you define success? And your CEO next door, if you were to walk into this room today, how is success defined? What is the organization looking for as a result from this modernization?
Well, one of the first things we are doing is creating a balanced scorecard for our organization, a corporate level balanced scorecard. It's got 4 quadrants. It's our financial performance, so ROA and I forget capital ratio. She's the analytics person. I'm the IT person. So there's financial. There's a member engagement quadrant. How engaged are our members? It's based a little bit off of NPS and CSAT. If you're familiar with Net Promoter Score, customer customer satisfaction. We have our internal metrics, which are like mostly project related, PMO, are we on budget, or are we doing our projects on time, how successful are they? And then we have our employee metrics. Are our employees engaged? Are they being developed appropriately? And this is all very much, again, corporate level, so somewhat percentages or red, yellow, green. Delivering on that initially is a huge win for our executives, because now they've got the summary snapshot picture. Whenever they want it, they can go in and they can see this. We've got 67% net promoter scores, and we've got 85% employee engagement, and we've got we're 1.5 on our whatever it is, capital, what was it? Capital ratio. I got it. So they can see for the first time, and once you can see the metrics, you can start, they say in business school, one of the first things, you can't manage what you can't measure. So once you can measure it, once you can see it, and you can manage to it, and then and then you can start asking the deeper questions. Why? Why did our member engagement dip? Why did our employee engagement dip? Why did something go up? Why did our capital ratio go up? Oh, it's because we haven't spent a dime in 6 months. Maybe we should start spending money. Maybe we have too much cash on hand. So you could start answering those questions. What was the original question? I feel like I'm
Success.
Success, right?
Success.
Measuring success. So thank you. So measuring success certainly is about delivering on the important key metrics, and then being able to see those metrics move. So identifying, as I had said earlier, identifying those areas for value and growth, putting a stake in the ground, saying this is where we are today and this is where we want to go, and then being able to measure that and saying, okay, we've moved the needle. We're able to move the needle on member engagement. We're able to move the needle on ROA because we put that stake in the ground. So that is really how you demonstrate success, is by putting a stake in the ground, drawing a line. This is where we are. This is where we want to be, and I'll show you how we're going to get there.
So you mentioned data governance earlier, so I just want to know a little bit more about that and how it lays the foundation for your use of building out this stack.
Yeah. So the data governance journey was one of the first things I started with when I joined. 50, 100 different systems, different data owners. It was so bad that if you would go to marketing and you go to lending and you go to operations, you say, how many active members do we have? You get 3 different answers, because they all defined active member differently. They all had different data sets they were working from. No one could agree. Data governance helps to solve that. A lot of people think about data governance in a information security standpoint. The defensive versus the offensive. I think it much more on the offensive. Well, if we can't even agree on how we define a member, an open membership, an active membership, how are we ever gonna do any sort of analysis here? So getting the people in the room, so identifying the stewards or the folks who are, at first maybe the data owners or at least the subject matter experts, getting them to agree on nomenclature. When we say member, this is what open membership, this is what we mean. And if you have a slightly different definition of an open membership, maybe we call it a lending member, or a member with loans versus an open membership, or we call it a marketing member versus an open membership. So agreeing on those terms. So identifying the folks, the stewards, the champions, who are generally your data owners or your subject matter experts. Getting them in a room, laying out, here are all the systems, who owns them, here are all the data points, who owns them. So that's the next thing, right? So once you agree on the terminology, data governance is really the business end. Master data management is the technology end. But okay, now we all agree on what's a member. Now where do we go to figure out what our open memberships are? You could go to core banking, but then you're going to lose, student loans or commercial loans or other pieces. So where do we go? What's the source of truth? And then how do we make sure that source of truth is in front of everyone in the organization? So having those conversations, when you bring that up, when you bring up how many open memberships do we have, and 5 people give you 5 different answers, it becomes extremely apparent right away. Well, if we can't even agree on that, how are we going to do anything else? Let's start there. So that's why I found data governance to be really the beginning of our journey. And then once the business was kind of understood, we need to be able to master this data, we need to be able to check its quality, then that's when you can start making the case for the tools.
How are you staffed internally to support the tooling? And are you considering any changes to that model now that you're learning more about how the new stack works?
So at the moment, I am a department of one. So I wear a lot of hats, a lot of individual contributor work. I do have someone starting on Monday. That was another reason really why we went with Passerelle, went with the vendor. It was again, folks who knew the subject matter and knew the tools and could help us really implement quickly. As we move, as we churn, we're going to want to start insourcing a lot of this and building up our in-house expertise. So we have someone starting. I've told a couple of folks here, I'm a dinosaur, right? I've been in this game a long time. I'm used to the SQL servers and the Oracles and the Cognoses, and Snowflake and Talent and Qlik they're not my world. So we started hiring the folks who have the skills, who know the new tools. We've purchased some training credits from Snowflake, from Qlik, to get certifications to make sure we're doing it. We've got our partners in Passerelle who are getting us up to speed with an MVP or proof of concept, and then we'll work with them on knowledge transfer. What did you do? Why'd you do it this way? How's this thing work? How's that thing work? And start building up our, it's like working out a muscle. If it's a muscle you've never worked out before, you can't lift, the 100-pound weight right away. You got to start with the 5-pound weight. So we're starting with the 5-pound weight now, kind of building up our internal capacity. That being said, Maria runs the analytics arm, and she has a very small team as well. And we're both now especially getting hammered, especially towards the end of the year. I want to see this, I want to see this, I want to see this, I want to see this. So it's incumbent on us with smaller teams to prioritize. This is where we're going to do spend our time and effort and why. And also, I hate to say it, but kind of distribute the pain. Like, I know you want it. We can't accommodate because we don't have the capacity. If you complain to your leadership that you can't get what you want out of us, that'll only help us in saying, hey, we need more people. We need more analysts. We need more developers. We need more engineers. We want to keep up with this. Everyone was asking, great. We want to capitalize on that momentum. And so really, that's the next step for us.
James, who is Snowflake's head of banking and cap market industry group. We're super excited, James. I know we've worked with you for a little over a year now, and thanks for your coming here today to be here with this audience. Jared, of course, whom you've met. And then Greg Spencer, who's Passerelle's Director of Product and Financial Services Strategy. So, first question for the panel is opening statements. Opening statements. Who would like to go first to put their opening statement out there?
They both looked distracted.
I thought a lot already.
I'm happy to jump in if that sounds right, Bruce. And thank you, Jared. It's going to be, this is kind of like Mac Jones trying to follow Tom Brady. They should have lost last night, so they seriously won. So there's going to be a lot talked about today. We have a series of questions, but I think my background is close to 30 years within the financial services industry across major banks, AWS, my own individual data analytics company. I'm going to try to provide a little bit of a context and a backdrop around the macro environment, just my opening statement to set the table, and then obviously we'll drill a bit deeper there afterwards. But if we think about today's macro environment, it's just the first word that comes to mind is complexity, right? There's dramatic inflation, huge amounts of uncertainty and volatility. When you have the most stable asset in the world, U.S. Treasuries, trading like it's an emerging market equity, it's difficult, right? Dramatic cost of capital change, the fastest rise in interest rates in 40 years. Post-pandemic, people thinking about resiliency over lower cost, right? Convenience no longer matters, it's actually about the resilience of your business. And I think that really leads us into the foundational discussion around time, trust, and I think change, right? Dramatic rate of change, and we'll talk more about this later, but I really think that the business resilience and sort of creating an anti-fragile business and or bank is at the forefront today. So we'll talk more about that, and that's my quick 2 cents. Thank you very much, Bruce.
Thanks, James. Who would like to go next?
I'll hop in next. First, I want to thank everybody for coming here today. We were very fortunate to have the opportunity with our partners at Snowflake to be able to use this venue and to bring everybody together to have what we hope is a very valuable discussion, and also hearing from Jared, obviously, about their journey. So first, thank you. I want to thank Jared again as well for being such a good sport, guinea pig, being up here on stage. And then last but not least, I'd like everybody, if you don't mind, to join me in giving a hand of applause for Carolyn for working so hard on this. So I'll just echo, some of what James just said, that I know that the market, the turbulence and the change and everything that's happening has been pretty significant, really since the pandemic, coming out of, sending everybody home, working from home and remotely, the changes in consumer behavior, everything that kind of led up to the interest rate environment today with the supply chain issues, and dealing with, everything in between in terms of staffing shortages and whatnot. I know that there have been a lot of challenges, and at the end of the day, I think we all know that, as Jared mentioned, that the technology battlefield, or the battlefield for banks and credit unions today, really is going to be in that hyper-personalization, the ability to be able to connect with your customers and do it in such a real-time, meaningful way so that it resonates with them. And obviously, data is at the heart of that. Data is really the heartbeat that is going to help, regardless of the tools, regardless of the tech, regardless of the integrations. Being able to leverage as much of the data that you currently sit on is paramount to your success. And I think the one thing that I would recommend for this group, these folks, a lot of you that I've met in previous conversations with, some of you I haven't, I'd love to meet you as well if we haven't, is that I think what the takeaway I'd like for you to have is that with the right approach, with the right strategy, with the right support and the right people, this is feasible for you. I mean, Hanscom has two phenomenal people, running the show right here with Jared and Maria, and they also have the support. And again, not to poo-poo, Hanscom, 1.8 billion in assets, but just put it in perspective that they're on this journey. They've got these new tools. They're going to be able to be supremely successful in their approach because they've laid the foundation appropriately. So, thank you again for everybody for coming, and hope you enjoy the time.
Thanks, Greg. And Paul?
Well, we too are delighted to be here. Very glad to be partnered with Passerelle and with Snowflake and with Click and Talend. I'm actually a recovering banker. So I spent 2 years, 7 months, and 23 days as a commercial or a credit analyst, and became a commercial lender. I know the days exactly because I think back to some of the things that we had to deal with from a tooling perspective, and green sheet dot matrix printouts to do our financial spreadsheets on, and handwriting our credit analyses and taking them up to the 7th floor for word processing to type them up double space. We had a bunch of red pens, we redlined them, we took them back up. So it's remarkable where we are today and the opportunity that's in front of everybody to leverage not just the data you have, but also the tooling. And so you'll find out, we have a cloud native SaaS service, and we help people advance their data governance maturity and enhance their data security posture. And our belief is, governance and security work hand in hand. In the absence of one, you have neither. And I hope that everybody, whether you're already down the journey or whether you're just getting started on it, that you recognize that it's a brave new world with awesome technology out there that you can just turn on and leverage. And I hope that I hope that we provide some value here today.
So I'd like to put out the first question for the panel. Why now? I know I'd asked Jared during our session, what pains have driven, but why now? Why should banks and credit unions modernize today? And maybe James, start with you.
Okay. The sky is not falling, but let's get a reality check of what's happening, right? So, I think it was March or April of this year, SVB collapsed in less than 48 hours with $140 billion leaving its walls with no one showing up at the door. Right? Shortly thereafter, you had a 170-year-old GSIB bank called Credit Suisse out of business because it had risk failures on multiple levels. So I think the rate of change that we're dealing with today is dramatic. I happened to be on the New York Stock Exchange floor the day SVB was down 60%. And while at dinner that night with the same people from the exchange, Peter Thiel put out the text message saying that if you have your money at SVB, you should pull it out. So with one text and a lack of confidence, it all evaporated. So what are the foundational pieces that we talked about earlier? We have massive rate of change, but trust. Where does trust come from in the banking world? It comes from your members and your customers, and it comes from the regulators. I think that's going to be the guiding light as we think about transformation and how to take the next steps forward. Again, so why now? It's foundational to business viability within financial services, especially within banking, to maintain that trust. And I think data, as Jared is very well placed and has been discussed already, is at the center of it. So how do you maintain trust between the regulators and your customers? And let's think about the landscape. It's actually, it's changing dramatically, right? Apple has 1.6 to 2 billion users. They're offering high yield savings accounts. We have customers and members that wish to seek yield. Bonds are giving you 5%, right? So I think this is part of the idea of then how do you understand your clients? How are you protecting the bank? So really, when I talk with customers, I'm lucky I get to talk to whether it's JP Morgan, I talk to credit unions of all size. What are people focusing on and what matters to them? What matters to them is protect and connect, right? How am I maintaining the trust around the risk that I have on my books from a credit and regulatory standpoint? Am I meeting my regulatory SLAs? Are my internal risk metrics accurate, right? Who do I have lending against my portfolio? What data am I taking in? How quickly can I look at that information? And I think with the introduction of Gen AI, and we've done a pretty good job not saying AI, so no one has to, from now on everyone has to drink each time we say AI. So get ready, get ready.
I'm gonna be in trouble here.
Oh, sorry, second round. So just to put this in a piece, that is also a fantastic opportunity, but also a tremendous risk, right? What's the one thing no one wants with anything in data? Data loss and IP exfiltration, right? So we can talk more about this in a minute, but I think what it tells us in the banking industry is that there's opportunity, but the risk, there's consolidation risks, right? JP Morgan now owns First Republic, right? So let's think about how do we do that defensive strategy to protect, but also how do we then understand our clients better? And I really think those are the two most substantial use cases we see actually implemented across the FSI landscape within the banking industry. Risk and regulatory workloads actually being implemented and used at Snowflake, as well as customer 360, member 360 use cases, understanding the lifetime value, doing a client footprint analysis, and then trying to really get to that behavioral data that Jared was describing to really have that Netflix-like experience in an omni-channel delivery, while understanding your clients to actually give them something that they want. I have 4 children, 22 to 15. They give away their data all the time. So it does sound creepy, but let's be very clear. People have made a decision that they're willing to use applications and they want hyper-personalized experiences. I don't love it. I'm 51 years old. My kids, they're all over it. But that's the next generation of financial services. They're much more savvy. They understand data. They understand that they're giving it away, but they want something back in return, and they want a hyper-personalized experience. So the why now, again, the sky is not falling, but I think there's tremendous risk and opportunity from which to assess, and using data at the heart of it and how you scale and leverage it to meet your members' needs is going to be crucial.
Paul, would you like to go next?
I'd love to, Bruce. I think it's just a question of inevitability. I mean, it's going to happen, right? It's we work across every industry. I think we've met with some profound success in financial services, large and small. We work with individual credit unions and FIs to regional banks to large fintech players like Q2, all the way up to one of the top 3 global banking cores and everything kind of in between. And so it's just it's a notion of it's happening all around you. The regional and community financial institutions are forced to compete with the regionals and the multinationals for that experience that you're talking about. And the only way you can achieve that experience is through availing yourself in the insights that the data hold. So it is, I think the time is great right now because so much, and Snowflake has really been a lodestar in being able to accomplish what companies like ours does by building a cloud native integration with Snowflake to allow for enhanced governance or advanced data security. So we're, better together is not just a cliche, but it gives you now the opportunity to leverage things that, years ago or definitely like decades ago when I was in the seat in banking, we didn't have the opportunity to do. You can't just turn on a service back in 1989 to secure your data or something like that. And now you have all the tooling, you have, I think, the subject matter expertise, and that's the other thing that I think keeps a lot of smaller FIs from moving is they maybe don't have the institutional competencies around certain domains, but you don't need those because there are people who can do that with you, whether it's through folks like Passerelle or whether it's leveraging some of the latest, greatest technology that allows you just to accomplish way more things at massive scale and really nearly at a fraction of what it used to cost. So I just think it's inevitable. It's, get in front of it. Don't be scared of it because you're not going to be in there alone. There's a lot of great things happening, and that's all I got, Bruce.
That's good, Paul. You got a lot. Greg, to you.
Yeah, I'll echo both what Jimmy and Paul mentioned about the need right now to be able to provide where the personalization, the know your customer, the 360, all of those things. As I mentioned, the war, the battlefield right now is being fought with data. And I'll go a step further and say that and argue that it's not just about today about the customer, and it's not just about the growth in terms of being able to sell more product and sell more services to your existing base. I think part of the reason why you should be considering to do this now is as much an operational efficiency play as anything else, right? So the democratization of information access, within your four walls, being able to deliver better insights to help your employees do their jobs better, in whatever capacity that you can, is going to become paramount. Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to say that this is, a keep up with the Joneses or, what's good for the goose and what's good for the gander. But your competition is this is where they're headed. This is what they're looking at. This is a continuous evolution, a continuous operational efficiency improvement, and being able to use data in new and innovative ways.
Jared, anything to add on why now?
Yeah, I think I'm going to connect with Greg and what James were just saying on both the operational efficiency and the risk. Historically, we've used nCino for our CISO analysis, if folks are familiar with nCino. And it would take 3 people, 3 weeks of a month to get all of the data ready to upload into nCino, to get our CISO analysis to tell us how risky we are, how much cash we need on hand. Because again, the data was all over the place and hard to gather, hard to use. So from an operational perspective, we were almost at the point for the first time where we're able to completely automate the data. And again, 3 people for 3 weeks, that means they get 1 week to do their job, their real job, and then they're back at it for the next month. 1 or 2 weeks, and they're back at it for the next month. So for the first time, we're nearly at the point where we're going to automate it. And that was just going to help us on the risk side, because now we know things so much faster. We can make reactions so much faster. And again, that nimble agility, that's what, in such a fast-moving world now, it's really required of all organizations.
And Jared, I don't think I've asked you, do you sleep well at night? Is there anything that keeps you up like, oh my gosh, I'm worrying about this? As you look at the obstacles for modernizing, is there one thing that, if you sleep peaceful, great. But what would be on your mind if you didn't?
I sleep very hard as a rock. My wife will tell you she can't push me out of the bed, roll me over. You know, the things that I worry about are, you know, just on the uptake adoption piece, the cultural stuff I've mentioned already. You know, we have the leadership, we have the buy-in, people want it, and it's the change from doing things the old way to doing things the new way, and those growing pains. They're hard, they're difficult. People don't want to change the way they do things, and that's showing everyone the new way and teaching and the value. That is really, I think, where a lot of it keeps me up, and convincing HR to let us have their data so we can provide them with the analyses that they need to do a better job. You know, it's the difficult piece, but.
Knowing that you're going to do such a successful job, you know, at the end of the day for the institution in doing this, and that you're going to have multiple departments and multiple stakeholders relying on the data products that you build, are you concerned with the ability to support it and to scale it going forward?
Yeah, I was saying it earlier. You know, we being somewhat of a small shop, wearing a lot of hats. That is also, it's very, very difficult. We don't want to burn out, and so we have to start drawing, you know, lines and saying no and making it other people's pain. So, love the momentum, want to capitalize it, but need other folks, you know, screaming at the rooftops for us. We want this stuff, and we know Jared and Maria are drowning. Give them some help, and that's once you get a lot of people on board on the bus. Then you know it's harder to stop that momentum.
Paul, anything keeping you awake at night?
No.
That's great.
No.
Anything that potentially could keep you awake that you think, you know, as a blocker, an obstacle?
I think like the biggest blocker, and this may not just be unique to kind of the financial services field, but the biggest blocker today is really just, I think, corporate or institutional inertia. And change is sometimes hard. I think it's probably magnified in highly regulated environments like banking. Change, you know, you guys have examiners and regulators that come in. I think Maria and I were talking earlier about, you know, agile versus the waterfall, like methodology of development and things like that. And it's just like, these are huge kind of cultural changes. I mean, literally you're talking about taking something like the daily dump from your, you know, Fiserv core that always sat in the Microsoft SQL server in the closet that only one person had a key to, and it was safe, right? And you're shifting that, saying, I'm gonna move this stuff up to the cloud. And everybody knows the promise, everybody understands what you can get from that, but then you really start thinking about, and it's come up multiple times today, and George, we were talking about this, HR data moving to the cloud, like the intransigence in some parts of the organization to forfeit, they feel like they're forfeiting the ownership or the stewardship of that data to move it to the cloud, when what they're really doing is they're adding this incredible facet of data that is, you know, one piece it's a vignette in a big mosaic. And so getting the culture and the kind of the inertia out of the way so that you can focus on the biggest picture and know that you can do this responsibly, you can do it safely, you can do it without being at, you know, any level of undue risk. And in fact, I would posit, when you do these things right, the next time the examiners are in and you've run your FFIEC CAT and you've gone, you know, on 15 different line level controls, you went from baseline to innovative because now you're doing things like automating access controls and tokenizing sensitive workloads and things like that. Like that all of a sudden makes your day-to-day a lot easier. And it puts you on a, you know, much more of a secure footing for really then trying to accomplish what we're all talking about, which is that customer 360 and enhanced experiences and just being relevant. That's what we're struggling with. We're just trying to stay relevant, right?
I guess over to you, James, same question.
I definitely don't sleep. And I think you're obviously been hired on Monday, right? So that's going to take all your burden moving forward in support of what you're doing, right? That person gets all of it. I have a slightly different perspective, and I think it's in the same vein, but it's probably from a little bit of a different angle. I think some of the biggest challenge and the things that, as we talk about this technology and business connectivity that needs to happen, right? It's an awareness, right? So I've worked in where I was the line of business owner connecting to hedge funds and asset managers and other pieces. And many people from that line of business and focused selling side, it's, oh, my relationship. Well, is it? Or is it the data and the tools that you're provided internally to provide value to that client, right? So if I'm working with a hedge fund or an asset manager, the insights that I'm pulling together is technology-driven, harnessed and pulled together that allowed me to do my job in the way it was. But there was always a divide between someone they thought was a piece of the engine versus the value proposition of how it was delivered to me and what timeline and the accuracy and the quality thereof, right? So awareness of what technology is providing is one of the pieces of the bridge that has to be pulled together, right? And that's also, it's bi-directional. So I think many business owners, it's Jamie Dimon talking in his annual report, like they spend $14 billion a year in technology. 7 to keep the lights on, fly, and then 7 to innovate, right? So if you think about that, there's an awareness of the value proposition of data and technology to accelerate outcomes. It's the method by which productivity is created and by which profits are delivered, right? So I think it's essentializing technology to recognize during a higher cost of capital, that's how you get efficiency, it's technology, right? So I think from an awareness standpoint, that bi-directional conversation needs to happen so that when there is a demand, this is not just, tech is not a cost center, it's actually aligning you to your clients, right? And you're managing the risk of the firm better. And I think bridging that gap and discussing that framework is gonna hopefully help conversations. And I know that's something that I try to do when I have these types of conversations with executives. But I think also it's coming back to what keeps us up at night. It's the idea of a strategy or lack thereof, right? Because the amount of data is not slowing. The quality of insights that might be gained from alternative data is not getting lower. This ocean of data, how do you harness it and utilize it, right? So in that light, so thinking of a strategy, what do I wish to use? What do I have today? Which do I wish to use to augment my strategy? And I think what we at Snowflake are trying to accomplish is, and this is not a sales pitch, it's really a simple foundational concept of stop moving data around, right? Move things from the administrative into enhanced decision intelligence, right? If you stop moving the data, you hopefully obviate the issues that surround inaccuracies, versioning, access control, some of the stuff from a compliance end that might exist. But it's really just a foundational simplicity of leaving data in place and permission access to it. So hopefully by that juncture, you free up, one of my first foundational principles is time and its scarcity, right? So if you can have more time, people start thinking about that ability from which to then do better member experience, do better customer experience, understand the footprint of your clients, and hopefully understand the risk of the bank than what you're taking already, because I feel highly confident. I have lots of friends who work in commercial real estate, including my 2 brothers and some friends who are in the private equity space. There's likely to be another shock coming up as the maturity wall comes moving forward. So I think what that's going to recognize is there's been a flight to quality. So again, what keeps me up at night? I don't want to keep quoting Jamie Dimon, but he's pretty damn good at what he does. I think of the lending, non-bank lending sometimes is somewhere between 60 to 75% of what goes on today, both in the securitized space. I think mortgage lending is around 62% done by non-banks. It's a shocking number. So if something happens in that sector, the flight to quality again is something we have to think about. So I hope that, and how do we then get past the challenge? I think it's a focused effort. And I think Jared said it very well. You can't boil the ocean. If you have a strategy, a cloud strategy that helps you scale, and you have a focused data strategy, maybe it's a 1, 3, or 5-year plan, what are the tangible pieces you wish to address in the next 3 to 6 months that are linked back to your members or protecting the risk of the firm? So, more on that later.
And Greg?
Yeah, I think I'll piggyback on what I was, my line of questioning with Jared in terms of what he was potentially concerned about as he starts to grow out this practice and starts to grow out more responsibility, more data sources, more reliance on the infrastructure that he's building. Because for me, while I sleep okay now, I still have moments of PTSD where I was concerned about the framework that I was supporting actually completing overnight, and that the business lines would actually have the information that they need the next morning so that they could do their jobs. So I think part of what this whole process should be as you start to think about modernization and building out a more robust, less brittle data infrastructure is making sure that you have the controls and processes in place and the visibility into how your infrastructure is performing. So having those tools is really going to be paramount in order to make sure that you're protected, the institution is protected from a risk standpoint, and that you have a line of communication with your business lines in order to make sure that change and issues are adequately addressed in a timely fashion.
Jared, back over to you. I imagine for a lot of folks here in the room, this is daunting. To assemble all data, make it trusted, enrich it, get insights, and take action. How do you get started? Like, what is step one that you need to do to start moving the ball forward? And I know you touched on it. How do you measure success as you take each step?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of organizations fail to set those, the evaluation methods up front. So whenever you're undertaking any project, not just a data project or even a home project, knowing what success looks like and setting those evaluation metrics and evaluation procedures, processes up front is key. This way, again, you can measure if you're successful or if you failed. Or I should say unsuccessful. But I think James hit the nail on the head with the strategy. Start with a corporate, organizational strategy, mission, vision. Making sure decisions align with those, boiling those down then to department level, team level, understanding where the organization is moving, why, how, and then where can we affect change and iterate in a short amount of time. Produce the tangible wins, the tangible effects, move the needle, and then start gaining momentum. Organizational inertia is another term that I'll use. I really think starting small, having the big picture strategy, breaking it down into bite-sized chunks. Again, that's another agile concept, right? Taking things in very small bites, not trying to stuff the whole sandwich in your face at once. I did want to mention really quickly, it's something that Greg made me think of. What actually does literally keep me up at night is one of the things I did with my old system is that I attached notifications to our Teams. So I get error notifications now on Teams, which I've connected now to my phone. So at least once a month at 4:30 in the morning, I'll get a Teams notification on my phone, and it'll say, "Oh, the core system data load failed." Like, oh crap, I'd better get up and make sure that it's fixed so that everyone's got their reports at 8 a.m. So that does keep me up at night. Hopefully will not keep me up much longer.
I'm just jumping in, Bruce.
Please do.
Actually, literally, something that does keep me up at night is one of the two pugs that sleeps with my wife inevitably. But Jared, you mentioned it earlier when you and Bruce were talking, and you mentioned it now. James, you did as well. But this is about focusing on outcomes. Everybody loves outcomes. And they don't have to be change the world outcomes. They can be little steps that advance an insight or help someone save time, effort, energy in accomplishing something. And it's by effectively understanding your data and then availing that data towards a process improvement or a new analytic or KPI that you didn't have. And so, when we work with folks, and again, ours is like, you can just turn us on and we start working. I mean, it's like, you don't have to set us up or anything. I mean, we're a service and we work, but the ability help people understand that what was previously unfathomable is now actually very reasonably achievable, is all predicated on them having a vision for what outcome they're trying to drive. And little outcomes lead to bigger outcomes, lead to much bigger outcomes. And so it is, you know, it's that one bite at a time thing, but I think understanding what you don't have today, but you wish you would have, is a great way to go and communicate to the C-suite about what I'm trying to accomplish here. And it would be an outcome that they would believe in. I mean, we have a lot of observability data over, you know, how data is flowing through Snowflake to users, and we can deliver it in real time. And the ability to deliver a dashboard that has insights into what are the trends around sensitive data consumption. You'd be blown away when you can put that dashboard in front of a chief security officer, a chief risk officer at a bank, and they're like, I had no idea. And then it leads to all these other questions which drive to these other outcomes they're trying to drive, and that's how you build kind of the momentum. And that's where I always say get started. Get started small, be focused, and be continually outcome-based, because people love outcomes.
Can I quickly jump in? Just occurred to me. On the drive here, I got a Teams message from one of our VPs in operations. Lovely lady, Cynthia. Jared, I have a question. Each month we receive a report for the over 17 youth account. This report lists members who turned 18 in the previous month and have a youth share account. Our job is to change the product from a youth share to a prime share account. I have been doing this since 2004, and I think this is something that we should be able to do automatically. What do you think? And isn't it great to say, yes, Cynthia, I cannot believe you've been doing this for 20 years. Yes, let's automate that for you. So those are the types of wins that people really, it doesn't have to be big, pretty dashboards or analytics. If you can get someone who's manually had to every month change 25 to 50 accounts from youth to prime shares and do it automatically, they will thank you.
That's a great example. Thank you for sharing that. James?
That's awesome. Again, how do I follow this? I'm gonna be the finance geek now talking about return on investment and free cash flow. So as I think the conversation is so germane, and again, not just higher cost of capital, but as we try to bridge this chasm between technology to business. We just had our earnings last week. Fortunately, everything was good, stocks higher, everyone's in the room is clapping hands. Our CFO multiple times used the term return on investment and free cash flow. How do we then take technology transformation? So as you're talking about these processy changes, my suggestion, and I've seen it work at a number of different firms, is the concept of showing, first of all, from a defensive standpoint, how is this keeping us out of the newspaper, right? Just a simple basis of that, right? I try to tell that to my kids, if this was in the New York Times, would you be happy with what you just last did? But I think from a business standpoint, that's very germane, right? I'm trying to channel some Charlie Munger in his honor. I think the next piece of the puzzle is, how is it helping us retain our customers and members? If you can draw a direct line to that between what you're doing, which could be quite successful. And I think the next piece of return on investment would be something around, revenue and growth, right? So, or of course, this is how much time and money. So TCO is a great concept. It's 3 letters, okay? Total cost of ownership. Can we show we're going to create a cost reduction? Are we saving time? Are we saving money? And showing the executives within your firm that what you're doing directly impacts those 3 vectors. And I'll say it one more time again. Keeping you out of the newspaper, retaining and growing your clients. I think I might have smashed those last 2 together, but it's really showing a revenue outcome, because that's the investment. You're showing ROI in a way that's tangible, that is going to help bridge that gap. And I think one of the other cool notes is start to think about, then as you say, okay, here's the metrics that we're using, I think it's going back to then saying, okay, here's the use case that directly correlates to those, right? By hyper-personalizing this data to our members, using behavioral data, not just something that's gonna miss. We believe there'll be a 20 to 30 to 40% return and catch. It will stop churn. It will also help us grow our data, our customer base and keep them retained, potentially make us more anti-fragile, another great term, during the next risk crisis, which will be coming at some juncture. Who knows whether it's today, tomorrow, 10 years from now. You're making your business prepared for the volatility and uncertainty that we're seeing today, and you're drawing a direct line to revenue and or your customer retention in a very direct way. Those things I've seen be successful across a number of firms, and from some people who are making very substantial asks of management for technology purposes. But it's no longer amorphous. This is not a knob-turning exercise and a piece of the engine. It's the connectivity that we all humans want to have with each other, and the data is the link to that.
Greg, any final comments?
You know, I'm not going to be able to follow that market perspective from James in any way, shape, or form. So I'm going to bring it way down, you know, to more of the practitioner in terms of how do you get started on this data modernization journey. I mean, hopefully, you have someone as passionate and as qualified from a data professional perspective that Jared is within your organization to help move you along this path. But if you don't, that's okay, right? While it can seem overwhelming in terms of what's out in the market, what should you be doing? There's so many logos, as Bruce mentioned. There's so many different pieces that you can stitch together from a technology viewpoint that it can become very challenging for you to make the decision to move forward and kind of put a stake in the ground and decide the direction that you're going to head. My advice or my recommendation is, because I was in that hole, right? I was trying to figure out in a period of time what direction should we go in, where do you actually begin, how do you start? Don't be afraid to do it alone. It's okay to actually go out in the market, look for help, find a partner who can help shepherd you through this process, because they've been there, done that. They can provide a new perspective that you may not have encountered to this point, because again, this whole modernization, the data infrastructure, where we are today, you may not have that competency in-house today. You may not have that perspective. So my recommendation is, whether it's Passerelle or some other firm that you may be connected to help you shepherd through this process, don't be afraid to go down that path.
Final question for the panel. Looking ahead, what's next? And how do you get prepared for what's next? Who would like to take that first? Paul?
Thank you, Bruce. So the data is growing, right? You continue to get more and more and more, and that's accelerating because there's so many other touch points now. I mean, you think of, God, there's going to be all the Internet of Things kind of data coming. Just think about how massive the data is growing, and the ability for you to have complete comprehension over your own data and the ability to drive the value for your members and your customers and your business gets actually amplified like by orders of magnitude when you can now start sharing that data with others. Whether it's third-party partners, whether it's vertically with folks that may be in the same line of business, maybe it's the folks that provide the car insurance when you're doing the car lending, things like that. And so you think you've got like a challenge right now on kind of harnessing what you have and driving the value from it. You need to really think an interconnected world is going to be with data sharing, and how easy that is made by some of the tooling that's available to you now. And the future is always going to be in the ability to monetize your data. It may not just be your data, you might be enhancing it with third-party services, you might be combining it with those partners, but the value that's going to come out of that data is, to me, what all this is leading to, and that's just going to keep going. I think Snowflake has an awesome kind of data share globe with all the little lights that it's breathtaking. But that's where everything's headed, and I think a lot of the folks that we're working with right now are extremely concerned about how can they share data effectively but keep it secure and well governed. And as I said earlier, you can't split data governance from data security. In the absence of one, neither will exist. And so you have to, you really have to understand where this thing's headed, and it is your biggest corporate IP asset is your data. Data on your members, data on your customers, the transactional data, the interactions you have, all the other stuff you're going to be able to collect. And then you're going to drop that into a much bigger data pool. And everybody involved in that is going to have different benefits from it, including the users and the customers. I mean, because we are the product, right? As individual users, we are the product. So I think the next thing is like after you get your house in order and you've been able to really maximize the value of data as an asset to your organization, the next step is, let me start looking at that QSO I work with, and is there a data sharing arrangement where I can contribute and I can get more? I mean, frankly, think about it this way. You've been, for all of you, everybody in banking, you guys have had your data sold back to you forever now. That's what the cores do, right? They aggregate it, they benchmark it, and then they sell you this really spiffy report. That's your data. So turn that value proposition around where now you're the purveyor of that. To what end? For what purpose? But that's where I think the next thing is. I mean, that's all I got to say about that, Bruce.
That's a lot, Paul. That's a lot. Thank you. James?
Do you mind if I jump in here more? Sorry. James said it before, I love this. Stop moving your data around. And that was so cool. I never heard it put that way. One of the things, and not to continue to sound like a Snowflake fanboy, but one of the cool things that I forgot to mention that drew me to Snowflake was this ease of data sharing. Back in the day, I had worked with some Dun & Bradstreet data for some B2B work I did, 10 or 15 years ago. And it's like, oh, you buy the data set, they, ship it to you either on a DVD or electronically, you download it, then you try to work with it, you try to get it into your warehouse, your database, and then you gotta, you get your value out of it, and then, 6 months later, you want a new fresh data set, and you go through that. Snowflake, you flip a switch. You do have to pay for a lot of the data sets, but you flip a switch and that data shows up and it's there and it's alive and it changes, and you don't have to really do much or anything with it or to it to get it to be useful. It's that way automatically. And with so many of us on Snowflake, either willfully or kind of being forced there, it does present an opportunity. It's something I didn't even think about. Well, it does present an opportunity for data sharing and sort of the power in numbers. How can we, and we all, I think Greg said it earlier, we're all, I think, on the same team here. Certainly in my organization, we believe that, we're not trying to steal the member from the next credit union over. Really, our competitors are Bank of America and TD Bank and the big guys. And we have value that we can provide over the big banks. And so can every other credit union and regional bank. And so I love the idea of teaming up together, easy data sharing, stop moving data around. I love that. Never thought of it, and that's my takeaway for today for sure.
James?
I think it's awesome you're a fanboy. This is checks in the mail. But no, well, to be quite honest, thank you. And I think, appreciate the kind words, but I think I would love to say that was my idea. The founders of Snowflake, Benoit and Thierry, who both had worked at Oracle, realized the power of not just creating a scalable database, but if you think about what is the financial services ecosystem predicated on? It's physical data movement. You said it, Paul. And the reality is, how do you stop that and simplify the process? Simplify access, where you're just getting simple change data capture of something instantaneous when it's ready, instead of waiting to 501 in a batch process, then all the ETL, the reconciliation. What can you do with all that time? Right? Time and its scarcity, that foundational principle, I think, again, that directly leads back to the outcomes we're looking for. So if we think about what's next, I think data sharing is something that we've obviously been foundational to Snowflake, and I think the ecosystem of those former data partners and others, and even the Bloombergs of the world, let's be extraordinarily clear, the most proprietary system on the planet. To many of the firms, I was working in investment banking, sales and trading departments, the most annoying thing in the world was $30,000 for what you were paying for, which was a fancy email system. But God bless them, they had made a fantastic product that everyone wanted, and it was the connectivity to your clients. It was that connective tissue between you and your client. That's why you had to pay 30 grand, whether I just used the email or the chat function, or I was using all of the cool analytics and data that were there. They even themselves have realized that they've had enough pressure from their clients, and you collectively all in this room have a voice, not just to say the Bloombergs of the world, but to those other banks in the boxes who we work with plenty of them, but they're seeing the light of that frictionless experience of how to get faster access to data and insight. It's your data, how do you wish to get access to it? So hopefully part of that whole praise of efficiency and productivity will bring me to the next subject, what I'm thinking about from, what's next, right? It's only been said a couple times, but again, I think this next potential productivity and profitability miracle of Gen AI and LLMs, right? So let's talk about that for a second. First of all, what is it? I think AI has existed for a long time, right? Let's be extraordinarily clear. LLMs are essentially just breaking down the communication barrier between human beings and machines, giving us access to substantial amounts of compute that just is unfathomable, right? So, but it's not really, but we're moving from this autopilot world where I call Bank of America and they give me 5 choices. Kind of a crappy experience a lot of time, because by the time I tell them what I want, it says, say things like this, and I'm saying something different, and it keeps running me down a path I don't want to go to. I think many firms that we're talking with are trying to optimize what they used to do in AI from a sort of very autopilot to move to that co-pilot, providing compute with context is the way I like to put it. So if I say I want to talk to someone, I don't say the word lending, but it recognizes I'm saying something close to it, and it puts me in the right channel. Those are the types of things that people are working on. And I think the key thing for all of us to recognize is that obviously FSI and especially banking is a highly regulated world. How do you do all this magic, giving customers these really great tools with explainability? And the one thing I don't want to, and I guess we could do it here, I've spoken on 5 panels about some of this over the recent months. And every time I go into, have everyone here who's in a regulated institution, how many people let ChatGPT through their firewall? Anyone?
We started last month.
Wow, it's through the firewall. This is the first. This is great. Is it a sandbox only?
A big pop-up happened. It comes up and says,
Yeah.
warning,
Yeah.
you are using an unauthorized tool.
Because of all of the hype, right? Let's think of hype cycles, right? We all seen the big S curve, right? The fast innovators, fast followers, and then peak of disillusionment and dropping down through the cycle of innovation, right? Higher interest rates and these technologies, I think what people are doing is focusing back on their core. Why did Meta's stock go up when they stopped talking about the metaverse? It was a $10 billion project that was yielding nothing, right? Doesn't mean it's not going to be cool in 10 years from now. But what you recognize is the core of your business. What creates your revenue? What brings you your clients? How do I utilize these cool new tools to reinforce my competitive moat in those areas that matter to my customers, right? So I could go on in a lot of different ways, but just for the broad context for everyone, and I think the reason why obviously everyone's board cares about this, right? Again, productivity and profitability. Investors are just like anyone else, right? We report to the boards report to the investors, everybody has this infinite cycle of why this matters. But the reality is a lot less is being done versus that sits in the newspapers, for one. There is a lot of innovation going on. I think it's going to be a lot more augmentation. Will there be some repetitive redundancies? Hopefully some of the automations that 2004 report no longer will exist. Doesn't mean an LLM is going to solve it. But some of the most innovative customers that I've seen, especially within the banking industry, across front, middle, and back office processes, are exposing back to their customers the corpus of data in a secure governed data estate, which we like to call Snowflake, that they can choose to bring either a proprietary LLM or a partner LLM within that governed state without moving the data around, that allows their customers to ask questions of it while the data stays in place. After all of the work of the security and governance that all these people in the room have done, you get the efficiency and the benefit that your customer experience is better because they get access to their data in a way that you're permissioning and governing and giving them entitlement access to. Versus the idea of, hey, let's go expose everything to ChatGPT, which may give you hallucinations, which may give you, you're spending, let's be very clear, there's a cost mechanism here as well, right? ChatGPT is really cool, but it doesn't prioritize well. It's gonna run you on a trillion plus nodes. That's really expensive. If you're trying to solve a fraud problem, or if you're trying to solve, how do you get yourself as a bank 80 to 90 to 95% accuracy, a human being will always have to look at the answer. No one wants to take the liability risk of being in the newspaper because we turned down people for loans, the ChatGPT said we should do it. That's a horrible answer, right? So I think just to bring all this back home, I think the innovation side of this is all great. We all feel behind, we're probably not. The key thing, again, when we work with customers, what's your cloud strategy? What's your foundational data strategy? Once you have your data house in order, if you choose to bring LLMs into it, don't have to move the data around. Hopefully you keep that secure governed data state for all of the great self-service analytics that Jared's talking about that people want, using the tools of your choice within the governed walls that you've created. So I think hopefully that's the path that we're seeing people take. And we're thrilled to have partners like yourselves to talk about it with and more later.
Thanks, James. Greg, over to you.
Yeah, so it's a perfect segue. Yeah, what James is talking about, if you weren't aware, is the Snowflake Cortex capability along with the NVIDIA partnership and being able to allow for large language model apps to be installed natively and securely and fine-tuned to your own first-party data. So, you know, the ChatGPT concerns today as it exists, think about having a ChatGPT type of experience for you and your stakeholders on top of your proprietary first-party data that's been trained and tuned to it. So kind of translate that to issues of when a report request comes in or a dashboard request comes in from one of the business lines. You have to decide whether or not, you know, does the information already exist today in some existing report or some existing dashboard. It needs to now be prioritized. If it isn't, you need to have resources allocated. You've got a whole workflow and process for solving a business question that can now be answered, again, hype and you know, conceptually, you know, everything as it moves now can be answered by someone asking questions directly of the data. A huge efficiency improvement that I think you're going to be able to see in 2024 and have it come to a reality. So beyond that, right? So and combine that now with also being able to mix and commingle your tabular customer first-party data with unstructured data. So think about landing your loan documentation, your internal SOPs, your business vendor risk docs, your tax returns from your loan apps, and being able to mine and ask questions of that data. I think, you know, the earnings call, Jimmy, that you mentioned, I think it was that Snowflake indicated that there's been a 17 times increase in the use of unstructured data in the platform year over year. So that kind of says to us, like, there is really an opportunity here to be able to leverage the tooling that Snowflake is bringing to the market that maybe is a use case that you haven't been able to take advantage of before, and do it securely, be able to train it, become that much more optimal and efficient within your organization. The last piece that, and I'm going to show you, you have to indulge me with a demo and have Bruce bring it up, is as you start to look and think about how you're going to allocate resources as you go down this journey, one of the things that's going to pay off that was just launched in public preview in the last 2 weeks, you know, Microsoft's investment in OpenAI, right, like in becoming an early investor and thinking about the technology was so that they could introduce that type of ability to converse and automate actions within their Office suite of tools. So Power BI Copilot, again, is now no longer in private preview, it's in public preview. You'll now have the ability to give your end users or your analysts Power BI sitting on top of your first-party data and ask it to create a dashboard.
It's going to take a minute to get this working.
And Bruce, I'll give you a quick bridge.
Thank you.
Just one thing that resonated while Greg was speaking is just so I get to come from the business angle at Snowflake. We have a lot smarter technological people than myself. If we think about LLMs for a minute, and I think everyone wants to think about this, how we're seeing this, and I think how many of our customers are thinking about it too, is that it's still first innings in a lot of ways, but how do we know which one of these models is going to be good at what use case? Right? So part of the business value proposition is showing not only the ability to then access data to solve a particular business use case, but which LLM is the best one for it. And I think at this juncture, that's not known yet. So then how do you then try to then obviously open and expose the ability from which to have all those different, choices of LLM models to get you to that 80 to 90 to 95% confidence that you want to have. So long story short, just want to ad-lib a bit, give Bruce a bit of a piece.
Thank you for that passerelle, which is French for bridge. Bridge from data to action. Thank you for that passerelle.
Wow.
Quick note, Paul needs to catch a plane.
Sorry. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Paul.
Also, can I, one very, very quick anecdote, very, very quick, sorry.
Yes.
For LLM, natural language processing, all that, it's making your data Googleable. As something that we have all done, we do it every day. Just the other day, I was like, I Googled, I was like, what was that Jake Gyllenhaal movie where he was building a rocket in his backyard? And Google not only knew the movie, but it wasn't even Jake Gyllenhaal, right? Who was it? Toby Maguire. I didn't even get it right. And Google knew, and that's what we're talking about with your data. Asking it questions, and not only does it know what you're talking about, but it knows what you even mean when you say something that you didn't even realize.
A Copilot in Power BI is empowering everyone to quickly find and share insights. For example, say I'm a sales analyst for a hotel and resorts company. Now, with Copilot in Power BI, I can simply describe the report I want to build and get insights in seconds. Maybe we need a new report to help us understand the profile of our customers, to gain insights into what is driving return visits to our properties. I just describe what I need, and Copilot will automatically analyze my data and create a new report based on my needs. Immediately, Copilot created a new Power BI report that is fully interactive, and I can start slicing and dicing my data to explore deeper. Copilot added the charts and slicers I requested, but also conveniently gives me options to adjust the output to get just what I'm looking for. For example, let's switch to ask for metrics and trends and a slightly different layout. Automatically, Copilot updates the report. Let's go ahead and keep this report page, but it goes much further. I can also ask analysis questions such as, what are the main drivers for repeat customer visits? Copilot responds by adding a new page to my report and uses Power BI's built-in advanced analysis capabilities for finding key influencers for variables in my data. Right away, I can see that customers who purchase spa visits are the most likely to be repeat visitors, followed by those who rented sports equipment. I can easily explore Power BI's key influencer visual further to learn more. I can even automatically see the most significant segments in my data just by clicking. Now let's go back to the first page and finish up our new report. I'm going to ask Copilot to make it look like our existing sales dashboard. Copilot automatically finds and references the dashboard to adjust my report with formatting and layout to match. Best of all, I can still interact directly with the Power BI report Copilot has created. So for example, if I wanted to manually change this line chart to add the reason customers were visiting, it's easy to do with just a few clicks. Let's also change the line chart to a ribbon chart to make the data really stand out. Finally, to make the report even easier for my team to understand, I'm going to ask Copilot to add a rich text description of my data right inside the report. This narrative summary is fully dynamic, and not only does Copilot highlight interesting insights from my data, but it provides citations from where in the report the data was taken. This summary will update every time the data is refreshed, or people filter the report with new insights based on the data. And just like that, in seconds, I've created a report that would have taken hours or days to do manually. Copilot, built on top of Azure OpenAI, is truly revolutionary for how we empower everyone to find and share insights.
So obviously this is a demo, right? So the data's been pre-built, pre-modeled. But I hope it helps demonstrate that the time to delivery, the development lifecycle for analytics with embedded generative AI in common tools will allow for significant improvements operationally, efficiently for you going forward. Where now, like your focus, if you adopt this type of capability, you know, once it's available for everybody, the focus really should now tend to turn towards the data quality, the data modeling, right? So, and now you can actually put the onus back on your end users, right, to ask the questions that they need to have answered, and then iteratively work to make the enhancements and changes and adjustments to the analytics themselves, as opposed to feeling burdened that you have to come equipped with a bunch of different dashboards. Why not just start asking the questions that you're looking to have answered, knowing that you have the data modeled, that it's secure, that it's trusted and well governed, and you let the applications do the hard work for you.
I know, I assume some people in here, like me, the first time I saw that demo, I thought to myself, well, I'm out of a job. So I think another key here is, right, it's doing the legwork. It's not doing the data quality, and it's not doing the quality assurance necessarily. It's not doing the analysis. So, you know, lies, damn lies, and statistics, right? So 10 people can look at a chart and draw 10 different conclusions. So our jobs now go a level higher, a level more strategic. Knowing what the AI is doing and being able to interpret it. I have, and that is true throughout my career, I've shown charts to people and they've said, oh, I can't believe this is happening, this thing is happening. I was like, that's what you got out of that? That's not what it was saying at all. It was saying exactly the opposite of that. So it's now incumbent upon us to, you know, allow the AI to do the legwork, the foundational work, and then add our value on top of that.
Any concluding remarks as we close out the panel, and then we'll open it up for Q&A? James?
First of all, thank you. This has been a pleasure to be here and have these discussions. The only thing I did want to just piggyback on what Jared just mentioned. I would love to say I have some really cool, I'm still trying to channel Charlie Munger. I don't have the great answer, but I think, well, actually, here's one quote I'll leave you with, is from Mark Twain. What gets us into trouble is not what we don't know, it's what we know for sure that just ain't so. So I think the first thing that popped in my head when I was looking at that little demo, it gave me a summary at the end. I've had about 5 questions that popped in my mind. One of the first ones that said, is it accurate? Is what was actually written there accurate to what was actually in the report and the data? 2, you know, the quality control out of all of that, right? And I think what it turns us into is how do we move up the information value chain? And moving from the administrative side to the enhanced level of thinking of decision making, right? I think one of the biggest areas that I get to work with, and I think I'm lucky enough to work with, is hear from credit rating agencies, card companies, major banks who might be working with merchant services areas, right? If you really think about it, what's the data that the Fed makes its interest rate decision on? It's delayed. It's typically inaccurate. Massive changes come afterwards. Everything's on a huge lag. We have demand information, whether it's coming from ADP reports. Many of these underlying card companies are customers of ours who expose data of this real-time consumer trend data, right? What information are we putting into the ingestion side? Instead of doing the administrative work on wondering if the report's actually going to run, having tools that help you with data quality, but then you get to do the critical thinking of the analysis of what comes out afterwards. And then how do we think about different data sets to enhance it, to create new derived insights, to actually put us ahead of where even Jay Powell is. And by the way, we can't all feel bad because they got it wrong massively. So if the Fed's getting it wrong, hopefully we have opportunities from which to enhance the work that we get to do in our own firms. These tools are only going to accelerate it. There will be certain places, right? Maybe certain areas at massive banks who have departments who do BI tools that are thousands and thousands of people. But time and augmentation enhancement of what people get to do, and probably in this room, you probably have overworked, under-resourced. Hopefully some of this stuff can save it, but I think hopefully get you working on the cooler things that actually have more of a business impact, because you get to then enhance it with the data that you get to see fit. So, sorry for the ramble. Thank you.
Thanks, James. Jared, closing remarks?
Yeah, thanks again to everyone here. You know, I hope everyone leaves with some tools, to not feel as overwhelmed. It's like how can we get this started? knowing that we're all kind of co-conspirators here in this little scheme to get people to use data. So you have the tools and the resources, you know, and again, you know, I've seen it so many times in my career, just overwhelming. We've got so much data, we don't know what to do with it. You know, coming away, understanding the tools, the keys, you know, where to start, where to focus your energy, and then really growing that, cultivating that momentum and growing that.
Thanks, Jared. Greg?
Yeah, I'll just say thank you again, everybody, for coming. We appreciate it. We hope that you found some nuggets of informational value here in the conversation between Bruce and Jared and our panel discussion. I think as Jared mentioned, you know, in terms of some of the places to start and where you are in your journey, I love the idea of data champions and finding those individuals in your organization that you can really latch onto from a collaboration standpoint to help get some of those wins, help demonstrate some of those business values. I think one of the things that I know that BI and information teams struggle with at regional community financial institutions is being able to quantify the power and impact that the current information and the data products that they produce actually have on the organization. So as long as you start kind of taking more of that mindset in terms of understanding and demonstrating the additional value and doing the follow-up with new products or new output that you create to kind of understand what the impact is, the more the support you're going to be able to get internally, whether from your data champions or your business lines, your stakeholders, to continue to move the needle and continue to move forward. But thank you again, everybody.
Thanks, Greg. So I'd like to open it up for any questions from all of you. Rita?
So, as Jared very politely said, the culture problem is a lot bigger than he sort of insinuated. So I'd really love for James and Greg for you guys to speak to change management a little bit more, because I think overall, the implementation when it comes to, you know, how we're prioritizing, which departments we're choosing, we're using a lot of, you know, business value add metrics that we present, but we are still, there's a huge gap in being able to describe that to people and bring them along with the teaching and coaching aspects of it. So I'd really love for you guys to speak to what you've done in the past, change management wise, how you integrate teaching and coaching within it, because tech tools, if you have users that are multi-generational and multi-learning, you know, ways that they do it, so I'd love for you guys to speak to that.
Sure. I think creating a continuous feedback loop with the individual, and I 100% agree and know where you're coming from, Maria, in terms of the challenges associated with not just different technical capabilities and different visions, but also personalities as well, right? So being able to move the needle individually with different folks. Number one, you need executive support. You need the champions from your executive team as a initiative internally to be able to demonstrate success and to be able to move the needle forward individually with each of your individual business lines, departments, etc. So I think taking that crawl, walk, run approach, understanding the pain points that a particular individual has, or what the new metrics and KPIs that you're looking to develop, and going through a coaching session with them, getting their feedback, soliciting their feedback. The constant communication in that feedback loop is, I think, one of the areas that can't be understated, right? You need to be able to continue to enhance that relationship and demonstrate that you're there to help, that you're there to help them succeed.
Thank you.
So my 2 cents would be a little bit different. I've never run a technology organization. The company that I started back in 2009 had a huge data component, and it was basically benchmarking execution of foreign exchange trades. A lot of data ingestion, a lot of taxonomy, a lot of challenges. But we had a very small team that the mission was extraordinarily clear, so we didn't have to deal with changing from a legacy mindset. One thing that I've seen that has helped from what I hear from clients, so not from my first personal experience, but what I hear from clients, is that training aspect, right? It's one thing too, because I think it's, hey, this isn't broken. It may be slow, but it works. The fear factor, I grew up in the Boston area. Nobody in technology wants the next big dig, right? Let's be extraordinarily clear, right? That is the analogy I like to use because it resonates probably with everyone in this room. But the key thing is, I think, if we're taking some of the tidbits of what we've learned here to show, first of all, change is essential now from what we talked about at the beginning, right? People have to recognize that business viability is essential. It's exactly why we're doing this, right? We've seen the change. I won't go through the horror stories again. But I think it's then the education of how the ease of use of the platform, right? Not just Snowflake per se, but the idea that, is it simple to use? Show training, we have resources that we help people with. The one thing I will go back to is that, most people are used to dealing with data in Excel. So one of the things that we have, and I think that's worked extraordinarily well, is we work with partners, loads of partners. But let's be clear, one of them is Sigma, an Excel interface that scales on top of your corpus of data, right? And again, I'm not just here to pitch them. What I think is fantastic is not changing what someone is used to. We are not trying to change your world, right? I'm not asking you to, if you live in the South Shore, I'm not trying to ask you to walk to work across the water, okay? You can still take the ferry or you can still drive up terrible Route 3, right? The reality is I think what you're doing is saying, let's use the tools that you're used to. The interface is exactly the same. We are trying to give you the horsepower to scale underneath it. So if some of that may help, but I think, again, with that champion connectivity point and showing them, I'm not trying to take your job, but would you like to move into this higher order, move up the information value chain, provide more business value, while meeting the business SLAs? Most of the feedback that I've heard from data teams, both from product and data analytics teams that get to cross that business to technology chasm at many banks, is that their biggest fear is that they've not been able to meet the SLA of the business and meet their rising challenge. Okay, now I'm trying to give you tools to do so. Your job is only enhanced, whether you believe me or not, and try to simplify the process of the ease of use of the tools, and whether they're used to using Tableau or a different interface. We have a thing called Streamlit, lots of different ways to utilize it. That's something I think that may help.